My name's Lil Green, and I work at Glasgow Women's Library, and I've had the pleasure of stepping into my role there and meeting the responders of colour, and getting to put together this celebration for this amazing project that they all worked on. And I'll be chairing this evening's event. So before I introduce you to everyone, just a little bit about Responders of Colour. So it was founded at Glasgow Women's Library in January 2021. Cast your mind back to the depths of the pandemic. And the lifelong learning development worker Nadine Aisha Jassat founded the group and brought together women of colour and non-binary people of colour to share creative responses to depictions of women of colour in Glasgow Women's Library's Girls Annuals archive. And a Girls Annual is kind of these instructions that were given, sort of published in 70s, 60s, 50s of how to be a girl, things like Jackie and stuff like that. So the workshops were publicly advertised and a small group assembled. They met online, and each month they discussed not just those annuals that were in the archive and the depictions of women of colour in them, the stories they told or didn't tell, but the group also shared, their lives, their thoughts, and the stories that they wanted to tell, the things they had to say. And this volume today presents just some of the writing created on that journey. So I'm going to introduce you to the people here. So we have Myra Aryaratnam, who is a whole mix of things, brought up between many places and cultures until taking a long pause in Edinburgh. Myra nurses, writes, advocates, loves, eats, reads, and hangs out with a vast cross-section of the local and global community, and is involved in other artistic ventures. And this was Myra's first creative writing publication. It's very, very cool. Yes. Beside me here, we have Nadia Maloney, who is a neurodiverse social entrepreneur, writer, and book addict with a passion for social justice and human rights. Nadia can usually be found barefoot in local parks while homeschooling her young son and running her social enterprise in the East End of Glasgow. You're very amazing people. So next to Nadia, we have Lisa Ng, who is an Edinburgh-based Glaswegian at the tentative beginnings of her creative writing journey with both prose and poetry. In October 2021, Lisa took a lead role in organising the inclusion of the Readers of Colour book group on the BBC show The Big Scottish Book Club. Yeah, props to you. Her work is published in the Responders of Colour Annual and the Writers of Colour audio anthology. And she also appeared at the 2022 Edinburgh International Book Festival as part of Scotland's Stories Now. And lastly, here with us right now is Hannah Moit, who is a graphic designer, animator, and illustrator based in Edinburgh. Her artwork is often concerned with gender, race, sexuality, particularly the experiences of women of colour. She makes posters, publications, printed matter, and all sorts in between, and works with anti-racist organisations to create engaging animations for complex issues. We also have two people from the group who aren't here with us, and I believe they're online, so we can still give them a big cheer when I read their bios. So Jasmine Hundal, who's actually in Vancouver, is a museum nerd. These are her words, not mine. Fondler of yarn and mountain enthusiast. She has worked with fragments of heritage across Canada and the UK, always with a decolonising mission in mind. This is her first time publishing her creative work. And lastly, Naseem Rebecca Assel is a Glasgow-based poet and journalist from Time and Ware. Her poetry has appeared in magazines including Poetry Wales, Gutter, and Modern Poetry in Translation. In 2021, she was awarded a Scottish Book Trust New Writers Award for Poetry, and in 2022 was shortlisted for the Edwin Morgan Poetry Award. She worked on projects with the Poetry Translation Centre, the Poetry Business, and the Rugby League World Cup. And we are really sad that those two people are not with us right now. But yeah, a round of applause. So without further ado, we'll get into the questions. So the first kind of questions I'm going to ask you are about the project. So if one of you would like to go first, I'll read the question and then you can decide between you. What called or interested you in responding to the Girls' Annuals and Archives at Glasgow Women's Library, and what expectations did you have? Have the mic. Is it on? It is on. Well, I think it would be pertinent and prudent to say as well, in relation to this question, but also to the wider project. What drew me to the project was the project leader, Nadine Aisha Jassat, who has also got materials that she provided for this annual as well. And I also believe she's online as well. Nadine. Nadine facilitated and generated Readers of Colour, which is a reading group for women and non-binary people of colour in Scotland, and sourced and there was fascinating materials and amazing discussions and just an incredible sense of community as well. So I knew if Nadine was going to be leading responders of colour, then exactly the same thing would be happening, and I'm down for that. And yeah, like we really went down. We like literally went into the basements of Glasgow Women's Library, what Nadine did, and brought up all sorts of different annuals from different points in history. And I know Nazim as well has got a really strong interest in annuals as well, so props to Nazim as well. And yeah, I'd read my nana's annual when I was little. My nana had when she was younger, and when my mum was younger as well, and hadn't really considered back in the day as a small child quite how racist a lot of the tropes were, and because it was just part of day-to-day narrative. Looking back now on the older ones, they do jump out, but the project kind of looking back made me also think, I wonder what's going to jump out at people from this day and age when they look back, when they in the future when they look back to this day and age. So yeah, so it's been a really like interesting, like reflective journey. Lots of points of hilarity as well, and a lot of in-jokes, a lot of like piss taking. Yeah, so the whole thing, like I said at the beginning, fascinating sources, excellent facilitator, amazing sense of community. Thank you so much for sharing. So we've got quite a lot of questions and readings to go through, so I'm going to move on to the next question. The girls' annuals, although you described looking at them, actually they don't really feel like they're at the centre of the book. Actually, annual work is. And I was wondering, how did this pivot from just responding to rewriting to then original writing happen, and how did it feel to do that? You on the spot? Hello?
Yeah, so I did write on the exact system, but it was more of a rewrite. So and I think that pretty much the project went well. It's just very free flowing and kind of freestyle. we hadn't planned for it to end up where it is, and that was part of the beauty of it. Right? It was just free flowing and natural and organic. But yeah, when I did write about this, the stuff that came out wasn't nice, but kind of sparkly at the end. It's quite empowering, which I think speaks to the project as a whole.
So we actually have a response now from Jasmine to the next question. Um, oh wow, very coordinated. That was beautiful. Here's what I made earlier. So, Jasmine, my question to you is why do you think decolonizing archives through creation, shared joy, personal histories can be so powerful? I think it's really powerful because this is what the collections are meant to do. In like more traditional archival spaces, people aren't encouraged to engage with the material the way that we were, to like really critique it, to use it as a platform to start creative writing and conversation. And activist spaces, I think this is what I'd love to see, being done in other archives and libraries around the world. And it was so powerful because it provided a way for us to connect to each other and get to know each other, and to really like feed our own creative spark and writing. And obviously, like you work for a museums association now in Vancouver, so you have this kind of umbrella view of what's going on. And I just wondered, as a heritage practice, whether this is something that you've seen again, or whether this is something that you want to see more of as you continue to work in heritage. Yeah, I think this is the ideal situation. Like, I would love to see this being done in other heritage spaces, because it really steps away from that traditional setting of just inviting like researchers or people in to quickly look at material, to not really engage with it, to only, sometimes you only get like an hour or two to sit in your reading room, look at something. Instead, we were given the opportunity to do whatever we wanted with it. And it was so much more creative than that static scenario. It was so much more dynamic. So yeah, this has given me a lot of ideas for the future. Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you. We will be hearing more from Jasmine. Great. So we're now going to get into the writing itself, and move away from the wider project. So I'd like to invite Nadia to read from your work, the responder. Yeah.
This piece is just titled First Response to the Archives because it was literally just raw, like a free write, that what came out in response. Sad, angry, disgusted, sick, hopeless, inferior. But that's not poetry, is it? It's just words. So I spread the words out like feelings spread across my palm, finger by finger, in cuts of crimson hurt. Each word cuts deeper into a feeling buried within, hiding from the truth, displayed in the day-to-day, microaggressions mixed with blatant ignorance, sprinkled with entitlement and a dash of hate just for good measure. A meal for the eager when there's nothing else to eat. Taste buds shrivel and shrink, shrouded in shrapnel of shitty days and shitty people. The best people are the worst. Malcolm's wolves in sheep's clothing. are the ones we love the most. Tongues lapping, licking up every piece of gold-plated venom they drop at our feet. If they shout fetch, we run for gold, silver or bronze, while dressed in pride and blind denial. We are strong, we say. We are survivors, we say. While we play their game and speak of infiltration and mutiny in our safe spaces, made of fake walls and fake teeth. No bite, no structure or commitment, just our wayward selves pretending to belong, expecting acceptance without accepting. We are the exception.
That was really powerful. Thank you so much. So uh, there's a few things I just want to pull out from your work, just in general in the chapter. Just amazing lines. The labeling and the stereotyping, the pigeonholes for the pigeon, categories for the categorized. Labels can sometimes be validating. They can bring us closer to ourselves. As an autistic adult, I am finding myself in the cracks of rejection. Words bring me home. Things like every search came up with the English translation first and the Sanskrit language afterwards in brackets. Another reminder of how everything has become secondary to empire. And lastly, but that's not poetry, is it? It's just words. So I spread the words out like feelings across my palm finger. I just all these lines, you just have such like an incredible sensitivity to the double-sided power of language and words. How sometimes they put us in boxes and categorize us, but also how they brought you home. Words can liberate, heal, and empower. But on the other side, they can enforce and exert power over others. And I just wanted to know, like, where does that awareness come from, and what kind of writing you find actually brings you closer to yourself?
I think the awareness initially came from childhood. So hearing people's words being spoken to me, and probably to other people too, and the effects or the negative effects that they can have and the power that they have and how we need to actively recover from those kind of words. I think maybe my neurotype as well made me more sensitive to words and the power that they hold and having a sort of naturally overly analytical mind. And then I think as I was older, the legal background and studying law sort of helped me to understand the power of words more and how it goes, sort of it moves from just emotional and raw to structured, educated, and having more of a sort of ability to utilize the words and turn them around. And yeah, so and what words bring me closer to what words bring me writing brings me closer to for me, I think it's poetry and free writing. I do all different types of writing, and I'm working on like trying to learn how to do short stories better and prose. But I think naturally it's always been the free write of poetry because it's so raw and honest. So I don't ever plan what I write. I don't ever sit and think, right, how do I do this? Which made this project particularly challenging because we had to write about something specific, and I was just for months I didn't come up with anything until like way past the deadline. And it was literally what popped in my head when I was on the toilet. Like that's just it's just how it works. It's like always a free write, and then I can look back afterwards and really dissect the words and realize, and it's kind of therapeutic as well because I think when I look back and then see, wow, that is actually how I feel. That's how I felt. That's the impact that had on me, and that's how to deal with this, and that's how. And then you can see how other people feel, and then the impact my words have on other people, and it just really helps me to reflect on life in general. But first I need that free write to sort of fall out and then show me the way.
Thank you so much for giving that insight. Like, yeah. yeah, beautiful image. But no, yeah, just knowing like the roots of like that kind of sensitivity to words and language and the two places that it's come from. Thank you so much. We're going to move through to Lisa now, who's going to give a reading of a poem from the collection, but then also a new poem, and that will relate to the question that I'm going to ask. that's a really nice idea. Do the one from the book first.
Hi. Just on. Okay. I'm actually just going to read the second part of my name poem, which is my surname, which is It took a long while to embrace my name given to me from my father, the more loving, kinder side of the family. Instead, I wished for the more easily anglicized name from the mother side. But with each added vowel, overfamiliar use of my first name, disbelief at only 2 letters, invalid name warnings in online forums, I have come to fight against each racist comment. I have done this with the force of my namesake, Mui, a Shaolin Buddhist nun, who is one of the legendary 5 elders and who created a new kung fu style that did not rely on brute force. So I say gently, it is pronounced N. There is no vowel, sound it out like an elongated small N. N. The G is silent.
Thank you so much. Obviously, meant a lot to you. Yeah. Honestly, that was a really, really powerful reading. So, can we just get another round of applause? So, Responders of Colour was a part of the beginning of your creative writing journey. How has your writing evolved since then? And we'll get to hear a little bit of some new writing after.
It just seems really strange, actually, to be like doing something like this and to see my name in print. Because I think when I first did a creative writing workshop with Nadine, I think the idea was to just kind of get some things out of my head, like maybe related to past trauma, maybe related to race, maybe related to, bad stuff. And this was just a really good project because I have a pantoum in the book about a story about Snow White. And this was where, after a conversation I had with Nadine, where I was talking about yellow face and like representation of like East Asian women in media. And I was really furious that a certain actress was cast as the major in Ghost in the Shell. And I was like, I'll have to tell you the story of how I was the only girl with like black hair and a hairstyle like the Disney Snow White. I didn't get cast because I was supposed to be too shy and quiet. And so they gave it to a blonde girl with blue eyes instead, who wore a black wig. And as part of the project, there were 2 sessions, one with Gauri Raja, who did a fairy tale storytelling, and then also a session where we talked about poetry forms, so ghazals and pantoums and haikus, which I'm never going to attempt. And so that produced the pantoum in the poem. But I think then having a chance, and then also being a part of the Scottish Hip Hop Writers Network as well, it's just encouraged me to that I can write whatever I want. So it doesn't necessarily have to be about what people expect you to write. It doesn't have to be about race. It doesn't. I mean, I do write about that, and it's fine. But I can also write about fun things or light things, or nonsense. So this new poem, which may be a bit nonsense. It's called Asian Don't Reason. And apologies for my French pronunciation. Food is life, une raison d'être, but there is no reason for the raisin. That dried, wrinkled, poison to dogs. Dogs, human's best friend.
always on the lookout for treats, but never in a revel's bag, inevitably picking a chocolate-covered raisin and spitting it out post-haste. Such behaviour is not to be countenanced at elegant afternoon tea. Navigating the menu with care, no fruit scones, please, plain only with jam and clotted cream, applied in whichever order you wish. My uncommon allergy giving another reason to avoid the cinnamon roll and pain au raisin that would only give pain, not pleasure. And raisin's cousin, currant, residing in the horror of the Eccles cake, that fly pie trap that cannot trap me. The horror is not during Halloween, but in the most indulgent of seasons, where Yuletide traditions are eschewed. Presents of icing and marzipan unwrapped to reveal unwanted fruitcake, to be discarded discreetly so as not to appear rude. An abundance of polite refusals and parrying at the constant thrust of mince pies, whose buttery pastry cases cannot tempt from the chopped mixed up fly meat encased inside. And when buying bubbles for the toast at Hogmanay, I get asked for ID. And as they look upon my face, not dried or wrinkled or poisonous to dogs, I see the raised eyebrow and look of surprise. Don't you know? This Asian don't raisin.
Thank you so much for sharing your writing journey and for creating this other poem that is just so full of humor and like. So we're gonna go virtual now to Jasmine. Yeah, thank you. It's almost ballistic. And Jasmine's going to do a reading, and then I've got a question for her as well.
Territory of the continent Casey and Surrey, British Columbia, which is why I can't be there in person today, but I'm really grateful to still be a part of today's event. And I just want to say congratulations to all my fellow respondents of color. I'm so proud of all of us and just thrilled that we have this opportunity to celebrate our work. You're incredible. Thank you. Thank you for being a source of support during a difficult time. I miss you all. And thank you to Nadine for bringing us together, and to Lil for organizing this event, and to Lighthouse Books for hosting it and celebrating us as well. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick reading of the gift. Started to shrink. Microaggression. Microaggression. Trait racism. Dare. Absolutely. Post-colonial disappointment. she was receiving a gift. She could feel her anger around her like a force field as she walked down the street. Anger at the stranger who took one look at her skin and told her she must be Sri Lankan. How dare he lie to her? Privately ignoring the visitors to my own frustration at the local change makers, hoping exclusionary again. Your ears don't always pick up the radio, but your body always does. Nothing hurts. She kept a lot. She could make it hours without breaking before it became too much. So the gift. Our protagonist was lucky enough to see anything daily basis in the job that she endured at her full place for. One thing began to take after. She could feel the energy that these museum objects she was paid to care for. She tried to take a picture of a girl's face. She separated. Eventually, she realized that the photograph needed to be blurred. They didn't want to spend an age apart, even for a relationship. She also continued to appreciate the gift, the time of connection between her and the woman, others, the woman, the time that she had to she needed to think right to find the gift. So with the art, the gift, the thoughts alike. I wrote that piece when I was living in England, in a town where I was just experiencing so much racism every day in so many different forms. Just in my daily life, at work, like everywhere, I felt surrounded by it. And at the same time, I was caring for all of these museum objects, many of which were stolen. Like, there was no denying history, even though there wasn't written proof of it. And I started to feel this energy come off of the objects. And it felt so connected to what I was going through. So yeah, that's what that's about. And just as a follow-up to it, after a year of taking the time to rest and come back from it, I consider that wound healed. Okay, thank you so much.
Let's have a follow-up question that's able to record.
So Jasmine, I'm going to ask you a bit more specifically about writing. We have you, us, your daughter, the big one, the gift, the name, the wound, all of these characters and objects are capitalized, and this capitalization, it runs through your writing and has a way of giving an almost mythological weight to the experiences that poetic voice or the characters in your work go through. Then naming and cataloguing is also a big part of archiving and heritage. And I felt like it's the fairy tale space and your background and heritage states collided in verse and story. And I wondered if this was intentional, and if you could expound a little bit more on why you chose to capitalize or mythologize these things in this way.
Yeah, amazing question, though. There's so much power in capitalization, and like as you mentioned at the time, like I was caring for museum objects. I was working in a museum setting where I was writing a lot of descriptions that were going into a database, and there are so many strict rules about what gets capitalized, what doesn't, the way like grammar is structured, what kind of key words or terms that you're using that are like considered valid and ones that aren't considered valid. And it's so political. A lot of it had to do with just colonialism in general, as it always does, but like what is recognized, like this country name is recognized, but this other country name is not recognized, and this is the name that we know like actual people who live there prefer, and all of that. And so when I was writing, I think I was thinking about what really mattered to me, what felt like it should have that capital letter, and what felt like it could more like fade into the background, and how I wanted to play with that. I'm a really big fan of Ruby Kaur's work, and in her poetry, she doesn't capitalize anything, and that's grounded in Gurmukhi, and we come from the same community, the Sikh Punjabi community, and so I also grew up reading Gurmukhi's script and seeing the lack of capitalization there, and I think that all just kind of informed the way I write, but like very subconsciously too. So yeah, I hope that answers the question a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of want to know more. It's so interesting. I wonder if you've done more writing that plays with those hierarchies.
Yeah, not really. I mean, I still like creatively write on my own and journal a lot too. And again, the capitalization comes in and out. I think it's very tied to punctuation too. Like you can just feel when something needs to be capitalized. But like my work in the Responders of Color book is the only stuff that's out there right now.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for giving some insight into that. It was, really, really interesting to know where these decisions are grounded in. So, thank you, Jasmine, so much. We're going to return to the panel in real life now, but it's really appreciated. So weird. Can we give a big round of applause?
I'm so glad we're able to include her contributions. I'm really starting to see this theme of like the power of language and how people harnessed it and taking back your own power, really. So we're going to move on to Hannah now. But a slightly different question. We're going to move away from writing for a second, because Hannah actually designed this beautiful annual. You can have a round of applause for her.
Thank you.
And I just have to say, from this bright yellow and contrasting purple cover to the full color illustrations which are dotted throughout, this annual is fresh, it's bright, it's joyful. And I just wondered how this artistic direction sort of started to emerge, whether it was something you just felt when you were reading everyone's submissions, or was this something that the group gave you clear direction on?
It was a combination of a couple of things. So I came in when a lot of the writing was already done. Obviously, some people still doing workshops and things like that. But the response to the annuals was meant that there was a body of work that this was sort of coming off the back of. So looking at the annuals, a lot of them use sort of watercolor painting, and it's stuff that's from like the 50s and 60s and 70s. So it's all of these like representations of little blonde-haired, blue-eyed children cavorting in the sunshine, sort of thing. And it's all in very muted tones. It's all very like kind of washed out. And part of that is that it's aged over time. It's been in the archives, and part of it is just that the style of these books and how they're sort of presenting this very like idyllic idea of 1950s whatever place they are. And so the group came to me and wanted to have representations of themselves that felt like they really did look like them. So I got them all to send me loads and loads of photos of themselves. I was like, I know this is weird, but can you please send me loads of pictures of you from here and here and here. So did that, and also was responding to the images that they were producing in their text as well. So like whenever I'm doing illustration that responds to writing, it's reading over and over and over and picking out images from it that felt right. But also working with each of the writers to produce an image that looked like them in a pose that they were happy with, and sending it back and forth. So for each of them, I was doing sketches, sending it to them and seeing what did they think. But the style was very much like trying to be representative of each of them as a person in the way that they wanted to be represented as it related to the text as well. For the painting, I went through each one of each story, each piece of writing, and I was painting in response emotionally and also with the content. And for the cover, in terms of the colors, I was responding to the very muted tones of the normal kind of 1950s annuals, and I wanted to make something that was much more vibrant, still using like a limited color palette. It wanted to feel really like punchy and like graphical, but still using like half tones in the typography, and still using this big bold outline, which was very reminiscent of the 1970s annual covers that we had. But yeah, that's basically it. Long story for a small book, but yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear like the amount of intricacy and thought. It's the same level really as the writing responses of just taking that visual response. It's brilliant to know more about that. So thank you so much. So last but not least, Myra is going to be doing a reading for us of two different contributions to Responses of Colour.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Hannah. We get a round of applause for Hannah.
So I'm going to read a poem and part of a short story. The short story is in the first. And the two are connected in the sense that they're both related to my family. And so the story title is The Diamond and Sun. For my sister, who protected her other world in power and love. That's not the story, that's the Bible. If you stare into the dark night sky with your eyes squint enough to see a flicker of a double moon, there lies the land of eternal sun, known as Gatchago. It's very easy to get to Gatchago. Straight out of the biggest window in the house, or down the plug hole on a Tuesday, where you'll be greeted by a friendly spider who guards the entranceway. The king of Gatchago was hailed far and wide as a benevolent and loving leader. She was known for her many travels with her Grand Vizier, Chickaboo the monkey, and for welcoming many visitors into Gatchago. The king used the pronouns she and her, for the king of Gatchago was a little girl. Despite enjoying traveling through many lands and meeting new people, it was very important for the king to return to Gatchago every few days. Gatchago was blessed with beautiful and balmy eternal sunshine,
and it was only in this condition that the king could find rest and sleep. The king had travelled to other lands that had blissful sunshine. However, even a slight change in the weather meant that she could not find rest. The people of the land, beloved by the king, delighted in the healing power of their eternal sun. They generously invited visitors to take away pieces of the sun to their own land, so that they may also experience its benefit. The sun grew back in places where pieces had been taken, as it was powered through the great diamond Jupiter, the most precious object in the whole of Gachigo. Instead of being cautious of sharing their sun and the power of the diamond, the Gachigo people were generous and warm, and they hosted, fed, and celebrated the visitors according to their custom. The visitors enjoyed these festivities so much that they found themselves staying in Gachigo for longer and longer. But something troubling began to happen to the visitors of Gachigo. For just as much as the king could only sleep in the sun, the visitors could not, which meant that when they stayed in Gachigo for too long, their lack of sleep would send them into a frenzy. In order to protect the visitors from this madness, the king arranged a schedule for all the visitors to adhere to. This allowed time for the visitors to take their piece of sun, to socialize and celebrate, and to return home without the fear of becoming mad with sleeplessness. The king and Chickaboo continued to travel in and out of Gachigo, and he did, as the visitor schedule was so well organized that it took care of itself. However, amidst one of their travels abroad, Chickaboo and the king received emergency communications for informing them that the conniving and contemptible Queen of Goo had entered Gachigo out with the schedule and stolen the diamond Jubity. Not only so, but the queen also intended to steal the eternal sun, having stolen Jubity to maintain the sun's power away from Gachigo. So that's the first part of the short story. And then, as part of the poetry styles workshop that Nadine facilitated, I also wrote a pantoum, which apparently is what the cool kids are doing now. So this pantoum is entitled Music. Musical theory book. Laid out on the music stand. Nana's fingers before my own, tinkling gently on the keys. Laid out on the music stand. A melody, contrapuntal, tinkling gently on the keys. Symphonic roar, pared down for the house. A melody, contrapuntal, issues forth from the front window. Symphonic roar, pared down for the house. Silence rests in the wind. Issues forth from the front window, a tuneful piece of fabric. Silence rests in the wind as the notes weave gilt in the tapestry. A tuneful piece of fabric. Musical theory book. As the notes weave gilt in the tapestry. Nana's fingers before my own. For reading both. Felt like I was two different people listening to them. So Mara, I'm going to ask you more to do with the story that you read at the beginning. The Diamond and the Sun is a whole flippin' universe of its own. It follows the little girl king of Gachiego as she uses wisdom and generosity to rescue the eternal sun and save her people from the queen. Can you tell us a bit more about this universe, where the details came to you from, what conflict is playing out in this world, and why sleep and dreams the key to piecing the Jubilee silence back together? So it is very insightful of you to call out that it's a universe, because it is a universe. Not mine. I have, with consent, I've with consent been generously given my permission to use my sister's made up universe, made up land, which she had when she was little. So she's 4 years younger than me, which when you're little is like a really big deal. And so I was like very much the older sibling. So three of us, and she was the baby. And she used her imagination to transport her to other worlds, to create her own universe. And the gender binary switching was all part of that. In Gachigo, if you identify as a boy, then you're a girl, and vice versa. Not sure where like third genders come in there, but I'm sure she'll have an answer. So I just need to check that out with her. And to be honest, they're probably just, I think they're probably deities in that land. Everything was the opposite of what it is in our world. And you really did get to it from going out the biggest window in the house or down the block on a Tuesday, but only on a Tuesday. It's very specific, she's very organized, hence there being a mention of the schedule. She's obsessed with the schedule. She's a professional photographer now after being a mental health nurse for 10 years, so she's super organized, super scheduled, like the opposite of me. So I had to borrow this because no way I could have come up with something like that myself. So she when things didn't go her way, she would announce that she was off somewhere to some remote part of the world. So I'm off to Australia, I'm off to Africa, and she would like pack her bag and march behind the sofa. And like if you spoke to her, she wouldn't answer back because she wasn't there. She was in Africa, obviously. How could you not tell? And as she got older, the story of Gachigo got more and more elaborate, and she certainly did have a grandmother, Chickaboo the monkey, who used to come and irritate me a lot. I don't know why Chickaboo kept targeting me, but I got very angry about it. This universe developed. I think it's pertinent because I'm also a mental health now. I think it's pertinent to mention part of some of my sister's skill set was working with very troubled adults and young people, and particularly when working in secure units in Nottinghamshire. She was part of using sleep and dreams as a strategy for managing trauma. So a lot of the time, if someone is experiencing very traumatic flashbacks, a technique that's taught, and it's incredibly difficult to do, as all psychological therapeutic techniques, very, very challenging to do, but basically you teach the person to see their dream like a video, like a film, and come back out of it and identify like a stop button or something that they can then press. This is all whilst they're asleep, to make it stop, to make the flashback or the dream stop. For whatever reason, my sister already had this skill embedded in her, and so like when she did have nightmares, sometimes it would be about Gachigo and including the Queen of Fu, because it is a very real universe, and according to her, literally all of this was happening. So she would be able to kind of use that technique that for some reason she'd already mastered. Should obviously that a career in mental health was clearly the way forward. She was able to kind of use that technique to come out of it. And so the sleep and the dreams are very important as part of kind of, I guess, how she managed her own emotions, as was her world of Gachigo. So that's why they interconnect with that. But I am very grateful to Kat, who I think is watching, for the use of your imagination. Thank you very much, and to let me turn it into a story for this annual.
Yeah.
Mind blowing to know where timeless in a way, and so to know how it connects into your knowledge and your sister's experience and knowledge as well. So just kind of gives it all another dimension. So yeah, thank you. We're going to move away from writing and more to about that kind of future and things. But just before we do, we just give another round of applause. Yeah, because all those readings and yeah, the insight into your writing has been amazing. So moving on to kind of closing out the questions, kind of what I wanted to get to, I have this title here in my notes of like anything but static. This annual is really interactive. There's a quiz. Yeah. It's what kind of white savior cover girl are you? There's also mission statement. There's writing exercises at the back. It's literally like the antithesis of everything that I associate with museums. You know, stillness behind glass doors, a linear history. It actually feels alive. This annual. And so what I want to know is where that liveness comes from and where it's growing or going. So between you, was there much call and response between you as responders, and like what have you exchanged between yourselves? Well, unless someone is really
I think when we were doing those sort of interactive things that people could do rather than just reading, I think it's when we were reading the annual, like, so they had like say something like, oh, the meaning of your name, and then of course we're like, well, none of our names are in there. Or quizzes about, I don't know, beauty or something, and you just like, yeah, it's not for us, so let's create something where it is for us. And I think we had a lot of like laughing. I think some of, I mean, you had to laugh at some of the things where it's just like, it's just like it was ridiculous. Like,
if you don't laugh, you cry. So.
Just like that's the last day. It's shocking. It's shocking. Oh, but yeah, I remember reading thing about makeup, right? It's put on your makeup, and it was about make sure your neck is really wide, like it has to be wide. Yeah. Oh. I don't know if that was a question, but that was the rant I was having.
I like an idea of there was a lot of interaction with us and you, Catherine. A lot of call and response. And actually your questions like made me think a lot deeper about the work and kind of made me reflect a bit more. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So to just the diamond in the sun. Oh, I don't know. The diamond in the sun, as I was like illustrating that, like that was one of the that's I think the only like long form like story writing in the whole book. So obviously it's fun to illustrate everything. It's fun to get like doing the broken glass scene. I won't spoil it. So the part where glass breaks and getting to like draw that and really thinking about like the sound of the shattering and like all of these sorts of things, and speaking to you about your work, getting to speak to everybody about their work. There's quite a lot of response there in terms of like, you know, obviously as a reader you interpret it however you interpret it. Each piece of writing is going to touch a certain part of you that perhaps isn't with the original author, but I can't speak to the author. So I was able to say, like, does this speak to the work in the same way that it does for you? Or does this feel appropriate? And even things like, so I also did a graphic design for the book, which was like typeset. I'm sorry. But it meant that I was able to be like, feel okay with this being here in the story. Like, does that feel like a break that is going to like interrupt the flow of how I can go like that? So things like that felt quite good. And yeah, with using like when I was doing her portrait as well, being able to say like even things down to like does the transparency of this feel light in that, like, you know, because the way that she's depicted, like does this feel ethereal but still you know, those sorts of things. I think that felt really good to have that level of interactivity.
It's yeah, I think there's something about the bringing together of words into pages and into a collected book, and why creating the book is so important. Threads start to get woven together. Um, so my next question kind of relates to a part in the mission statement. Our book will be a shared screen, a group embrace, a place for us all. And the exercises at the back shows that you were already thinking about the legacy and the potential impact of this annual. So I wondered, what is your vision for the future of this annual and future responders?
Oh, Nadia, you've got to answer it.
So I would love for it to continue. I would love for it to have a life of its own. I imagine it as being like an annual of its own, but like a literary annual. So we've discussed it, and we're in the process of applying for funding very slowly, so that we can continue to do the workshops. So we would all just do different workshops around the country, and then so we'd be creating more of these opportunities for more people to get creative in that way, both illustrating and writing. And then everyone that's contributed to in the workshops would then contribute to the annual. This is working. Yeah, and then yeah, and also we would have it like open for submissions, so people from around the world could also have an opportunity to respond to something that they feel a need to respond to, because I feel like there's a sort of like, I don't want to say the word market, but like for want of a better word, right? There's a need for something like this, for people to have that creative outlet and to respond to things that are affecting them every day. And it would just be great to have it as an ongoing thing that could celebrate people's creativity and give them that space, make the space real, not fake. Not that this was fake. Oh my god. What I wrote in that piece, but
We got you. So I'm going to invite questions, just a couple of questions from the audience. But before, so think of things in your head, because there's always that silence and like questions from the audience. So I'm giving you warning. So do you have any questions for each other? I did send you these questions in advance.
Oh, I have a question for Lisa. Well, it is a question. I think I kind of know some of the answer. It's in relation to laughs and rants that were had in the reflecting of responding to the annual. I just wanted to know kind of, where did the pun for Snow White come from? Because if you look in the annual at the title Snow White, the double meaning.
Yeah, I actually worked with Hannah with this. It's like, can you get it so that the no stands out? It's like, you're no white, so you didn't get the part. Got like, really pale skin because it was in Scotland. So.
And the dark ball.
I mean, actually, in the story, I ended up being the hag version of the Wicked Queen, and then I got booed. I was like, well, I wasn't shying quite there, so I guess I get the lead part. Anyway, it's fine, I'm over it.
Okay. Are there any audience questions? All that time to prepare.
I'll just do it really quickly. The bread and butter pudding is good, but next time keep the raisins out.
For anyone who can't hear that online, we're being told to keep raisins out of bread and butter. last chance for any questions at all. Yeah. Oh, they're all coming up now. What I'll do for everyone so they can hear this is if you say your question, then I'll say it again on the mic. So yeah, you can just.
Thank you.
So I'll just repeat that for people online. This is a question about the process. Do you think things would have been different if you'd been doing this online or if you'd been doing this in person?
I think a bit of both, because I think in person always everything comes to like so much more that kind of goes without saying. But at the same time, I think having it online makes it much more accessible to people that otherwise wouldn't have been able to be involved. And I don't mean because of the pandemic. I mean it's just in general day-to-day life. There's things that people otherwise wouldn't be able to access or attend or reach. So I think it just opens up the opportunities, and then yeah, coming to life with more of an in-person thing, but having it available online helps us to get there.
I just wanted to add to that as well, because I think the environment, well, the question was about the environment and how that impacted our process. And yeah, the environment's so important. I always found it a very grounding space to be in. And that is in no small part to Nadine's facilitating. I always tell Nadine, like, when she gets old and cynical, like, she should train to be a therapist because she's incredibly, like, insightful, so, like, gentle and so wise as well. She'd be brilliant at it. But the thing is, she's only, releasing the first of 3 novels. So I don't think she's going to be old and cynical for a long time, if ever. But yeah, like Nadine was always, such a like comforting presence as well, and facilitated such an open, but like well-held space as well. We always had a chance to kind of like bring whatever was going on for us to the fore, which allowed us to I guess kind of release that or let go of that, and also gave us the opportunity to like take hold of some of that for the writing process as well. Yeah, that was my
I think we'll just do one more question. So do you want to do the question? I'm gonna just pass you mic because you're close.
Oh no, I'm scared it's gonna be a big question. Sort of on process as well. I wonder, and Nadia, you kind of alluded to the way that you write with that free writing, but I wondered if perhaps Myra and Lisa, like, did you find that the start of writing of responding to something like a useful technique to start, I suppose, also kind of starting out writing? And I wonder, is it a way that you write now still? Like, do you have sort of like an object or a text or something as a starting point, or do you find that it's kind of a bit more free form? I'll answer first because you have to answer. We don't have to, but she will. That sounded really scrap all of that. So I'll answer just that answer first. Yeah, like I think I'm quite a responsive. Some people would say reactive person. So for me, like yeah, I feel like I respond to like lots of stuff in maybe a quite reactive way. And this actually made the process much more kind of manageable and sort of a bit more grounded. Yeah, like just yeah, I felt very contained in responding to these things. I think as well, like we, even though it was online, like we did get to know each other like pretty well, and some of us knew each other beforehand as well. So there was like a lot of banter as well, and I think that really helped in processing some of the really heinous stuff that we kind of came across so casually placed. That yeah, I think Nadia's first poem was like really summed it up for all of us. So yeah, definitely found it to be a containing space for responding.
I think sometimes when you look at stuff and then you think, is my response to this correct? You think, am I being oversensitive, or all that sort of thing. And I think when you had a group and then people are saying, oh no, I think that too, or oh yes, and then it's kind of like, yes, it's fine to feel angry about about this or something. And I think when you have a lot of thoughts about a lot of things, it's not necessarily containing, but I think it's a way of focusing on what you think about it, how to find a better response than just being angry or yeah, whatever.
Talking about the anger reminded me how Nadine had us all read Audre Lorde's Uses of Anger, and that was just so pertinent at the time. It was just great, and it helped us all to realise it's okay to feel this way, and we can use it.
It's not a better way to end a panel discussion than being like, Audre Lorde taught me how to be angry. So thank you for bringing that memory to us. So I'm gonna wrap it up right now, and I'm gonna slowly wrap it up by going from boring to exciting. So get ready for a crescendo. You all have some evaluation forms. Slipped inside your amazing colourful annuals. They're GWL forms. Glasgow Women's Library forms, and it just gives us feedback so that we can do more things like this, basically. So we want to continue doing this, and so doing this forms helps us to do that. And there's some pens at the back. I'd like to thank the Scottish Government's Equality and Human Rights Fund for funding the workplace for Nadine and now myself. The Connect for Wellbeing Fund from Learning Link Scotland, who helped the guest workshops with Nadine happen. The Scottish International Storytelling Festival and Scottish Story Forum, who made the fairy tale workshop with Gauri Raja happen. From Glasgow Women's Library, Nicola Maximovic and Jenny Noble, who helped with access to the archive. Miranda Hersko, a volunteer who helped with proofreading. Margaret Manley, who was on the finance. And Eloise Bertlistle for her guidance and printing. I'd like to thank Dr. Chanjit Man from the University of Strathclyde, as well as the EDI in Scottish Heritage Fund and the Arts and Humanities Research Council. I'd like to thank Lighthouse Books for having us here today and just being amazing with helping me coordinate this event, and I think being a real home for so many people in this city and beyond. I'd like to thank the audience for being here, for being attentive, for being warm and holding these amazing minds this evening. And last but not least, I would like to thank the responders, and I'd like to also thank Nadine for bringing this amazing project to life. So for Nadine, for Nadine, for Jasmine, for Myra, for Hannah, for Lisa and Nadia, thank you. And there's some little sweet treats as you leave for you to take. Anyone who's comfortable, masks will be removed for people to eat those. So there's a chance for people who aren't comfortable to huh? Yeah, that's how those tea cakes.